What's up, everybody? Back again with another one of my world-famous tier list videos. We're doing Nine Inch Nails this time, so obviously I had to get a little bit gothier for Trent, and so I hope you enjoy the shirt. I have a lot of feelings about this band's career, or this man, Trent Reznor, who goes by the name Nine Inch Nails, but is essentially a one-man band. He writes everything, and he gets some help from other producers like Flood, famously back in the day. But yeah, I definitely have some thoughts about his career. I feel like he definitely peaked at a certain time, and I feel like the last, 15 years of Nine Inch Nails have been very meh. So let's get into it, starting with Pretty Hate Machine, coming out all the way back in 1989, which makes Nine Inch Nails technically an 80s band. Not really. I mean, they got popular in the 90s. But I just thought that was interesting that they've been around just that long. Just for the sheer, kind of bringing industrial kind of rock and metal to the mainstream, and just the way that Trent was using electronic music in a way that was darker and it wasn't as happy and bubbly as a lot of the synth bands and the new romantic bands of that era, like Simple Minds or Soft Cell or whatever. I gotta put Pretty Hate Machine as an S tier record. It hasn't aged that great on some songs, but especially after coming out with the remastered edition, adding more punch to the songs, giving the songs a little bit more balls. They definitely, songs like Head Like a Hole, Terrible Lie, they definitely still hold up and kind of laid the roadmap for like the early Nine Inch Nails sound that everyone would come to know and love later in Trent's career. There were some moments that I really like Down in It, but yes, Trent is kind of pseudo-rapping in that song. A lot of people are kind of iffy on that, but man, just the 808 when that thing kicks in, it just sounds like a good song to me. Then you got Something I Can Never Have, a very tender piano ballad that has these dark industrial elements that come in every now and then. I'd say Ring Finger is probably my least favorite song on this album, but aside from that, I mean, everything else on this record is pretty much flawless. This is a classic album. It's hard. A lot of times when a band releases a truly classic album, which we're getting to, it's hard to look back and be like, oh, well, they had another really good album before that, and Nine Inch Nails is definitely an example of that. And the next album, we have Broken, and this is the only EP that I'm going to include in this album tier, simply because it was so instrumental in kind of progressing the Nine Inch Nails sound that everyone would come to know and love, and that would really set Trent and Nine Inch Nails apart from all of his contemporaries with just the different path that he was going with, adding a lot more rock and heavy infused kind of guitars into the sounds of the songs on this very short EP. Like the song Happiness and Slavery, not only is that does that song hit hard, but if you've ever seen the music video, it is Trent's into some snuff stuff for sure when it comes to visuals, because you can't even see that video on YouTube. If you want to see the video for Happiness and Slavery, you got to go to Vimeo to see it. And I can't even really describe it. Let's just say somebody gets very much tortured. So, I mean, like I said, very short EP, but, actually, it's a perfect length EP. It'd be a short album if it were an album, but it's not. So anyway, it is an S-tier listen, though, and the brevity of the EP makes it that much more classic in my mind. And later on, we'll get to how length and bloatedness actually hurts more than it helps. You think you're giving the fans all this music, but when they're not these kind of well-crafted songs, they're just kind of there, that's not always a good thing. For Broken, less is definitely more. And then he did a cover. He did two covers, or Physical, You're So. I know that's a cover. And Suck, I want to say, is a cover too. I might be wrong on that one. But it was interesting. If you bought the CD back in the day, which I own, you had to skip to track it. So after Gave Up, track 6, they had 90 something tracks you had to skip through, and on track like 98 and 99 were these last two songs. And back when you had CDs, you could do cool stuff like that. You could have hidden tracks that like, oh, what the hell, like there's so many examples. I might even do a video on hidden tracks because it was such a cool concept. And then we'll start to see a trend here. Trent does this another EP in 92 called Fixed, which are basically remixes of songs off of Broken. This is something with Trent being a electronic musician as much as a rocker, he does a lot. He likes electronic music, so he remixes his albums. And since there is so many electronic components to his albums, he's able to do that, and it makes sense. Although I will say I've never been a fan of any of the remix albums. There are certain songs on like Year Zero remixed, like The Great Destroyer is a classic example of a really well done reimagination of a song. But we're not going to talk about the remix albums, so they're not even going to be on here. After Broken, of course, we have the legendary Downward Spiral, which will go down in history as a classic album, at least a classic album of the 90s, which is unfortunate because it's just a great album, period. I mean, just the beginning of the album with the guy beating the wall or something, the boom, and then all of a sudden just this electronic onslaught of like distorted synths, distorted vocals. There's one point at the end of the song that this feedback loop of noise gets so loud that it almost like surpasses your volume level. Like whatever volume you set the song at, it almost goes past that level like forcibly. That's how like loud this swell of noise gets to where any instruments or vocals can barely be heard. And it's just, man, I get goosebumps even thinking about it right now because growing up, you just never heard anybody push the boundaries in such an experimental and cool way like that. And then instantly it cuts out, and the next song is Piggy, which is this very sparse instrumentation, just bass guitar, drums, almost sounds like crickets come in the background at some point. It has this very like kind of rootsy feel. And again, with this song, it starts layering more and more things on top of each other. But the most beautiful part of this song is yet another thing I've never heard done in a song before. So I was told Trent got on the drum set at one point towards the middle or end of the song, and he just started fucking around on the drums. And he is doing this solo, but he's playing so off the beat. Like it sounds like he's just literally drunk and behind the drum sets, just hitting anything and however he wants. And it's this beautiful like crash, and it totally takes the song off track. But there's still the bass and the backbeat are still going, but these loud drums overtake the mix, and it's so great. And then he somehow loops that madness to kind of go along with and lock back into the beat, and it was so innovative and just great song. Heresy, I always used to skip this song when I was a kid because that was back when I was like holding on to whatever shred of Christianity I thought I still had. Because on the chorus, he goes, God is dead, no one cares, if there is a hell, I will see you there. And it's like, dude, that goes hard. Like, as a kid who grew up in a Southern Baptist, like, family, like, that was too much for me at that time. I'm like, I just can't. But the song itself has this great, like, synth bass line that starts off, it's like this arpeggiated synth bass line. And Trent's voice is like all modulated and sounding all creepy in the verses. And then all of a sudden, God is dead with these big like open guitars and drums. And yeah. And then the fourth song, March of the Pigs, which has one of the coolest drum groove. It's not really a groove, but it's like the coolest drum pattern. I swear it's in like 5/4 because it's like doom dan doom dan doom dan. Then he hits the floor tom when it should be looping right back into the beat, but it throws it off that one beat. So it you think you're like you can bob your head to it, then that it throws you off. That you just have to listen to it. But then it comes in with that. I mean, that song just it hits so hard. Then you get into Ruiner, which has that chorus, that big, like, almost sounds like bagpipes, but what it really is it's sped up electric guitars. They're, like, super pitched up, and when you pitch up guitars like that, they do sound like bagpipes. And it's like the sound is so loud, and you hear like glass smashing in the background. And Trent had to mix his vocals in a way to where they're panned right into your ears when you listen to it with headphones, almost like he's whispering into your ears. Because I feel like that's the only way he could have delivered that vocal and have it be audible with all that sound going on. So it's kind of like so much innovation, so many studio techniques used that were just I had never heard before. I know industrial was around before Nine Inch Nails, and I know a lot of normies, their only reference point for industrial or even goth is Nine Inch Nails, even though Nine Inch Nails isn't even really goth. But definitely this is a lot of people's intro into industrial music, and it was for me too. I'm not gonna lie. I got into, Nitzer Ebb and Sisters of Mercy and all that way later on in life, but this was so much more, I don't know, because underneath it all, there were good hooks. There were things that you could sing along to or shout along to, and it was just, what can you say? I Do Not Want This, Big Man with a Gun. It just keeps going on from here with just banger after banger. But then we get to A Warm Place, and it's like this ambient music. And then this is kind of the first, well, it's not the first taste we give ambient music. He has a song called Help Me, I'm in Hell off of Broken that was an ambient piece too, I believe. And A Warm Place, it's just, like after the onslaught of these 9 songs that you've just heard, A Warm Place, it's really what your brain and ears need at that point. It's just this very ambient, beautiful piece of music. And it's a nice refresher. And then it sets you right in for Eraser, and then Reptile, like just those drums, and then like blow like that sounds like a spray, like a pesticide thing. You pump it and then you spray it. He's actually blowing into a trombone to make that sound. If you've never heard this record, you can just skip all this stuff because you're not going to know what the hell I'm talking about. But at the beginning of that song, and then the drums come in, the doom, doom, ga, doom, doom, ga, dun, 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 dun. Yeah, anyway, great song. Then we get to, I gotta burn through this a little faster, or else we'll never get done here. Then the closing track, Hurt, which in and of itself has become a legendary song, if no other reason than for Johnny Cash. I host karaoke, and people will want to sing Johnny Cash Hurt, and I'm pretty sure they don't even know that it's a Nine Inch Nails song that came out in 1994. But yes, much prefer Trent Reznor's version of Hurt to Johnny Cash's. The kind of creepy guitar, the whooshing, kind of ambient creepiness that's like the first 30 seconds of the song before any music even comes in. Trent Reznor doesn't give a fuck about writing a single for this album. This is a piece of art that he wanted to put out into the world, and he put his fucking all into this album. And that's why it got all the accolades it got, because it truly was just groundbreaking, especially for 1994. It just really changed the game up. What can you say? So Trent Reznor riding high off of the success of that album, as far as his kind of career, his artist life, but he was, going through drug addiction. The lyrics are very dark on this album. I have to be mentally prepared. I can't be in a bad mood and listen to this album. I can't be depressed and listen to this album. I have to be in the right headspace, or it will make you feel like you're going down that downward spiral. And that says a lot about this album as a piece of art. And this really is, in my mind, where Trent Reznor peaked as an artist. I can honestly say it just slowly went downhill from here. And a lot of Nine Inch Nails fans would call that heresy. Pun intended. They would call that heresy. They would call that, you're just a basic bitch fan or whatever. But I'm sorry. I just described to you in great detail as to why I feel like Downward Spiral is Trent's greatest album, and how everything coming after this isn't. So let's move ahead. Man, I really go into all these album tiers like with no thoughts in my head about what I'm going to say. I just go off the top of my head. I didn't know I had that much passion in me for the Downward Spiral, but apparently I did. So there was this 5-year period between Downward Spiral and Trent Reznor's very much hyped upcoming album, The Fragile, which was not only going to be the kind of the follow-up to this, one of the biggest albums of the 90s. it was going to be a double album, which I made a video about double albums. Didn't do too well. Wish you guys would check it out and give it some love, because I describe in great detail my problems with double albums and how they're usually not a good thing. They're usually a bad thing. And not only all that aside, we're closing out the millennium with a new Nine Inch Nails record, The Fragile. And I honestly feel like that should have been a single album. I feel like if it had been a single album, it would have stood right up there with Downward Spiral as far as the songs that were there that were good. Maybe not so much the raw emotion and the production, I guess the experimentation, if you will. It wouldn't stand up to the Downward Spiral in those regards. But in regards of just having some good songs on there, if it was a single album, I would have put it in the A tier. But I gotta say, for me, Fragile falls. I'll put it in the B tier, but if there was some line between B and C, I would put it in that. It's just an average album to me. It's bloated. There's so many songs on there that I don't care for. I think it has a strong opener with Somewhat Damaged. And then The Day the World Went Away, I just don't like that song. It's got like these na-nas in there, like what do we, Hey Jude all of a sudden, and just felt a lot more not the 3 Nine Inch Nails records that came before that kind of were informing us that like this is his sound, this is what we've came to the party for. It's feeling like things are starting to change. I'm not gonna lie, just looking at these songs by their title alone, I couldn't tell you exactly what it sounded like. Songs like The Wretched, I know that one, and We're in This Together, which I didn't care for that one either. Just Like You Imagined is an epic song. It's an instrumental, but it's fantastic. That's one of the songs that I definitely would have salvaged off of The Fragile. Just sounds like it would be a soundtrack to the most epic movie that you've ever seen. Le Mire is another instrumental. It's a piano thing. Love it. Think it's a great song. The Great Below is a really good song. Into the Void, I like that one. Starfuckers Incorporated. A lot of people said this song felt weird on the album. Like it didn't really sound like it lived in the same world as the rest of the songs. I got to agree, although I still like the song. I think if they had done a single album and kept Starfuckers and also put The Perfect Drug on this record. Why was The Perfect Drug not on The Fragile? It was on the soundtrack to The Lost Highway, but it wasn't on The Fragile. Why? That was a single. They made a music video for it. A very elaborate, expensive-looking music video. I don't understand why that song didn't make it onto this fucking album, but it makes me angry that it didn't. But there's just a lot of bloat on The Fragile, and a lot of people sing the praises of it, and, you know, that's great, but this is just my opinion. And so, up next, what do we got on this tier here? With Teeth. We're going to put that in the A category. So the thing that I like about With Teeth, and I love With Teeth way more than I did The Fragile, With Teeth was arguably Nine Inch Nails' comeback album. We hadn't heard from them since 1999. They had done touring, but as far as, like, putting out music videos and having, like, content to look at, hadn't heard from Trent. So when he came out with Teeth, it is a single album, first of all, although, 13 songs, very nice amount for an album. There was more focus on the songs. There was more kind of interesting choices, some experimentation. The kick drum pattern for You Know What You Are, really cool. And like that goes throughout kind of the whole song. Really cool. Pretty much like all these songs I feel like is really good. Love Is Not Enough. Every Day Is Exactly the Same. I mean, lyrically, who can't agree with that sentiment from time to time? With Teeth. With the Teeth. Like that song Only. This album produced some radio staples like The Hand That Feeds, Only. I really like Sunspots and that cool like whooshy synthesizer in there. Anyway. Then he's got some great ballads on here, like Right Where It Belongs, Beside You in Time. Yeah, this was Trent's kind of return to form. I wouldn't say that it could stand right up to Downward Spiral because though there were better songs and it was shorter in length than Fragile, it still didn't really carry the emotion, the depth, and the rawness that Downward Spiral and Broken did, which would kind of make sense. I've kind of learned as artists get older, they lose a lot of that passion and that raw kind of thing that makes their early work so much more, just makes it feel more immediate, I guess I should say is the word I'm looking for. And by the time we got to With Teeth, I felt like Trent had kind of lost a bit of that, and that's fine. Still a good album. And then, okay, this is where the Nine Inch Nails fans, if I haven't lost you at Fragile, you're going to start turning on me. We get what I consider the last good album from Nine Inch Nails, Year Zero. I listened to this album a shit ton when I was in school. I believe, it came out in 2007, the year I graduated. So I listened to this album a lot, and I'd go on walks with my mom and just have this on the CD player. And so this is a concept album. Basically, Trent Reznor was none too pleased with the Bush administration and the war in Iraq, so he basically was writing an album about this dystopian future that our government and our leadership at the time was going to bring on. And so a lot of these songs are very much, tongue-in-cheek in the sense of like I got to do what I'm told, or else, they're watching me. And, like Capital G is definitely, he's got this very much swaggery kind of mocking tone of, I believe the song's like a diss to George Bush, who was president at the time. And, concept albums, I either like them or I hate them based on kind of what the context is. I feel like sometimes it can mess the album up because it's like what would have been a cool song is now a weird song because the lyrics like really have to be taken into context of the concept of the album. And so I feel like that kind of like messes up a lot of these songs on here. But with that being said, I think there's a lot of great songs on here for sure. The Great Destroyer, fantastic song. Me, I'm Not, I liked that one. Hyperpower, The Beginning of the End, Survivalism, The Good Soldier, My Violent Heart. Yeah, I like most of these songs on here. But yeah, In This Twilight, it's a nice one. Zero Sum. Yeah, good album. I would say, like I said, Year Zero was the last good/great album from Nine Inch Nails. Again, he does a remix album, Year Zero remix, where he actually had other people kind of remix his songs, and a lot of them are bigger names, some of them weren't. Like the Great Destroyer remix that I was talking about earlier was by this guy named Mod Wheel Mood, and again, you should check that one out. It's more acoustic. It just sounds really cool. So then after that, to be honest with you, I kind of checked out of Nine Inch Nails. It seemed like around 2007, 2008, like when I graduated high school and started college, it seemed like my ability to take in like new music by the old bands I used to love started to kind of wane. I like all the bands like Primus, like the Pumpkins, after like 2007, 2008, I just kind of like stopped listening and paying attention to the stuff that they were putting out. And so I think part of that was I would give it a chance, and I was just like, this isn't that good. So after a while, I started losing faith in these people that they could even put out good music anymore. And that happened with a lot of the bands I liked, because a lot of the bands I liked from the 90s had kind of, blown their wad, if you will. They lost their juice, and they just weren't putting out, their peak stuff anymore. And then you also have to consider we were going into the internet age more, and bands were getting more into independently releasing albums. Like Radiohead released their In Rainbows album online that same year. You could pay whatever you wanted for it. And just the whole idea of like going to the record store and buying a CD of the new album was just kind of like getting more and more obsolete by the moment. And artists like Nine Inch Nails kind of realized that before anyone else did, and started releasing their albums online, like the next album, The Slip. And I gotta say, like, I was checking out at this point. I listened to the album, I tried to like it, but I mean, even going off of the streams here on Spotify, like, it seems like the fans kind of agree. Like, most of these tracks, like, have, barely over 1 million streams, and that's from, like, a guy that, like, at one point was like one of the biggest artists in alternative music. And so it seems like people agreed with me, and I listened to The Slip, and that's going in the C. Very average, very garden variety Nine Inch Nails template, but nothing that really like struck me as anything special, which was unfortunate because obviously I didn't want to not like the album. Also, he puts out these ambient albums called Ghosts, parts 1 through 9 or whatever. And I think I listened to it, and it's just not my thing. It's ambient, but not like calming ambient. It's like ambient that's going to put you on edge and make you feel like you're in a horror movie. And there's so many songs in these Ghost albums. Like, look at this. Like, fuck. Like, 36 songs. And they're all just called, like, Ghost 5, Ghost 6. Probably the most interesting thing about the this particular Ghost record is that apparently the sample from Old Town Road, the guitar, came off of this Ghost record because Trent made the stems free to use, I believe, or he made them available. Maybe they weren't free. I don't know. I know Trent's getting paid from Old Town Road though, because that one of those samples was used in that song. Go fucking figure. So like I said, everything after Year Zero was just mid to me. Just hesitation marks, Bad Witch. Then he released in 2020, he shadow dropped 2 more Ghost ambient albums, which one of the songs has this super high-pitched like ringing in it. I forget which Ghost volume it's on, but it's like towards the end of one of them, and it's just this really loud like ee sound. And it's not even musical, it just hurts to listen to. I'm like, what are you doing at this point? And I had even made a video that got a lot of hate, which was like, has Trent Reznor forgotten how to write a hook? Because that's kind of how I was starting to feel. It's like, can he write like great music anymore, or can he only put out mid-level stuff? I don't know. Maybe all the juice is gone. I feel like that happens to a lot of artists. They have only so much to give until it's like the can runs dry, or the river runs dry, whatever you want to call it. And they've got nothing else really to say. And if they do try to say it, it's just going to be very lackluster. Look at the Smashing Pumpkins. I made a whole video about their last few albums that they've released. Very bad stuff, except for a few songs. And I just feel like when you get to that point, it's like either start a new project, retire, do something different, or just keep releasing music if you want, I guess. But I don't know. I hate telling people what to do, especially musicians. I'm a musician. I would hate to be in a position where I wrote something great, and then I kept putting stuff out, and people were like, oh, your old stuff's better. And it's like, well, that's not where I am anymore. This is where I'm at now. Well, where you're at now sucks. And it's like, well, fuck you. That would be my first reaction. But I just can't help but to call it how I see it. I hear Downward Spiral, I hear Broken, I hear Pretty Hate Machine, and I hear the great songwriting in the experimental production and the immediacy, and I can't deny it. And I also can't deny that all the albums that came after Year Zero that I've attempted to listen to have all been mid as fuck. I can't deny that either. I just have to be honest with myself about these things. So anyway, I had a longer portion recorded for all these albums, but my phone or my camera decided to just stop recording, so this is kind of a hack job towards the end here. which is probably good because this video is probably running too long anyway. So anyway, let me know what your opinions are below. I'm sure this list looks like a very like just common average Nine Inch Nails fan list. You know, you got all the hit records at the top, you know, and then I'm sure they would have put Fragile a little higher up, but and then, you know, the newer stuff is at the bottom, and I'm sure I look like a casual fan, but I just gotta be true to myself, man. That's how I feel about it. And yeah, so let me know your opinions of what would your order be in the comments below, and insult my list, because I know that's going to happen, because I know I got some hot takes on here, especially about the last like 5 or 6 albums he's put out. And yeah, watch some of the other videos on my channel. I have like a bunch of these tier videos that I've done of all kinds of artists that you probably like. And yeah, people tend to like my tier list videos, so I don't know. I got a lot of other videos about like alternative rock and Nine Inch Nails and kind of like, you know, the 90s in general. And then I got some random videos about shit that you might like too. So make sure to subscribe, stick around until next time. Have a good rest of your night.